Evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and tonight the Madison, Wisconsin community is in mourning after a teacher and student were killed in a shooting at a Christian school. Police say the shooter also died. Let's get straight over to Jeff Harris at the live desk, and police just shared an update. Jeff, what are you learning?
Some new information just into the live desk, Dee Dee. We've now learned that the suspected shooter is 15-year-old Samantha Rupp, now who you see right here on the left-hand portion of your screen. A teacher and a student are now dead. 6 others were hurt. Police say she planned the attack in advance. Police are now combing through her family's home, already confirming they found a manifesto planning this crime. Police say a handgun was used in this shooting. A second-grade student was the first to call 911. Within minutes, police arrived and found the suspect dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now police are trying to trace that handgun.
I was getting ready for lunch, so it was basically lunchtime. And then I just heard sobbing, and there was a teacher, and she was screaming like, "Ah, my leg, help, help."
Do you know that teacher well?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like to hear that? Were you scared?
I was really scared, and I was really sad.
Now, the school doesn't have metal detectors nor resource officers. School officials say they had trained earlier this year about what to do during an active shooter situation. As of right now, the identities of the victims have not yet been released. 6 others were injured, including 2 students who are still fighting for their lives tonight. A vigil is scheduled for tomorrow.
New tonight, some fighting words from Vice President Kamala Harris. Today, she spoke at Prince George's Community College. It was an event that featured young leaders active in their local communities. And the Vice President talked about the result of last month's election that has left many people discouraged about the future.
But let me be very clear. No one can walk away. No one can walk away. We must stay in the fight.
The Vice President reminded the group the push for civil rights and women's rights would have never succeeded if advocates had given up after a court case or an election that did not go their way.
For more on this, we are being joined by Ray Locker, senior journalist, author, and columnist. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Hi, Ray. In your opinion, how do you look at Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's standing after his close ally and deputy resigned? Some are seeing this as a rebellion against his leadership now.
Well, he's been on thin ice for a while, and I mean, he's been prime minister for about 9 years, and that's a long time in politics. So I think his hold on his party, his hold on the country is diminishing, and I would not be surprised if he resigned, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he decided not to resign.
Yeah, he's, like you said, 9 years is a lifetime in politics. Trudeau, he's survived 3 no-confidence motions, and now the opposition again on the offensive. I know you said it might go both ways, but do you know how the Canadian public are feeling about all of this? And could he perhaps survive on public opinion?
I really don't think so. I mean, he's been declining in popular support in the polls that I've seen. And again, I don't live in Canada, so I'm not that intimately familiar with it. But he has been dropping in the polls. They lost a recent by-election in a relatively safe Liberal Party seat in Quebec recently. That's not a good sign. That's never a good sign. And so I think his expiration date may be coming up sooner rather than later.
I see. And some say at the heart of this political drama is those tariff threats from Donald Trump. How do you see the situation panning out in the course of maybe the coming days and weeks?
Well, look, if Trump takes office and enacts these new tariffs, it's going to be bad for everybody. Going to be bad for the United States consumer because we import a lot of things from Canada, a lot of dairy products. This was an issue during the first Trump administration. And he did it. You know, a lot of wood and paper products also come from Canada. So it would mean higher prices for U.S. consumers, which is something that every economist I know of has said would happen with these tariffs. So would not help the United States. It would not help Canada.
All right, Ray, thank you so much for all of those and the analysis. We'll be watching really closely. It was great talking to you.
Pope Francis has revealed in his forthcoming autobiography that he was targeted by suicide bombers during his visit to Iraq, but was saved by a tip-off from British intelligence. The attacks were planned in 2021 during his visit to Mosul, where Iraqi Christians had been killed or driven out by Islamic State fighters. According to the intelligence, a woman carrying explosives was intending to blow herself up during the papal visit, and a truck was also on its way with the same intent. The Pope said he was told of the planned attacks as soon as he flew into Iraq, but it went ahead the visit anyway. Let us speak to Father Benedict Keeley. He's the founder of Nasarian.org. He's a Catholic priest who worked and visited Iraq many times. Thank you very much for being with us, Father. The details of this are quite extraordinary, because the Pope was told on the Vatican flight over to Iraq that this was a possibility, and yet it still went ahead despite the concerns of the Vatican guards. It shows what a brave move it was on the part of Pope Francis.
Well, he knew, I think, from the very beginning that he was going to a very dangerous place. We know that the Christians had been driven out of the Nineveh plain, where Mosul is, in August of 2014, and had been heavily persecuted, many killed. Mosul was the capital of the caliphate. That's where al-Baghdadi proclaimed the caliphate. So it was always going to be a rather dangerous situation to be in. But this new revelation of the plot makes it even clearer how he was putting his life in great danger to come and support the Christians.
Yeah, a day after the visit, he actually he says in the book that he asked the head of his squad of gendarmes what had become of the suicide bombers, and the commander responded laconically, "They are no longer here." So clearly they've been intercepted by the Iraqi police. What did he say, or what did he say publicly about the visit when he came back from Iraq?
He was there really to show support for the Christians, because I've been there since 2015 visiting when ISIS was just very close to where all the Christians had been driven out from. And many of them felt during those years that they'd been neglected certainly by the West, but also to a certain extent by the church itself, including the Pope. And so I think he went really to show that they hadn't been forgotten. The Christians in the Middle East have been there since the beginning and are really a very persecuted minority now. And so he was there to support them, to show that the church in the West really did care, and they really appreciated that. They perhaps felt it was a little late in coming, but they really appreciated it.
Yeah, there were at one time around 1 million Christians living in Iraq. I think that number has diminished to only a couple of 100,000 now, maybe 200,000 or 300,000. So it was an important visit, and it was one actually that Pope John Paul had been warded off when Saddam Hussein was still there. He didn't travel.
That's true. This was Saddam went, and then of course, yes, the horror was unleashed from 2003 on for the Christians. The persecution wasn't just ISIS. People forget that the persecution and the horror began really from the fall of Saddam all the way up and then got much worse during the time of ISIS. And of course, it's still happening all across the Middle East. Christians are always at least second-class citizens, if not actively persecuted.
Yeah, the same happened, of course, in Syria. Where have they gone? Where has that diaspora gone to?
Well, many went into the camps in places like Jordan and Turkey. Some have returned, nothing like the amount that were there before. Then, of course, various countries in the West took them, Australia, Canada. Not, unfortunately, very many in Britain, not very many in the United States. Under both Obama and Trump, Christians struggled because they often had to go through the UN camps in places like Turkey and felt a sense of discrimination. But there'll always be a minority. The Christians will not be driven out of the cradle of Christianity, which is the whole Middle East.
Well, the book Hope was originally planned to come out after Francis's death, but we're told that it will be set for release in January to mark the Holy Catholic Year of Jubilee in 2025. So plenty more details to come out of that, no doubt. Father Keeley, thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you, Christian.
Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News.
Larry Hogan shot this video last night. These lights over his hometown in Davidsonville, just 25 miles from the nation's capital, as he pointed out. And then there's this.
I've never seen them. Wow, they just passed each other. Yeah, I've never seen them before.
New Jersey Senator Andy Kim shared this video of drones he shot yesterday. Federal authorities insist most of these sightings are actually legally manned aircraft. But Senator Kim says he checked a flight tracker app while capturing this video and that the devices he was capturing were not on it. The sightings are happening near LaGuardia Airport, too. Officials say they received unconfirmed reports of drone activity over that busy airport. As for numbers, the FBI says it's received more than 3,000 tips from the public about drone sightings going back to November 18th, all over New Jersey. Since then, there's been an average of 92 sightings per night and expanding across half a dozen states. In a joint statement, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security said, quote, "We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat, or that they have a foreign nexus." Lawmakers, however, aren't buying it and are pushing for answers and action. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and 2 other senators wrote a letter calling for a briefing with the FBI and Homeland Security. Well, in Connecticut, Senator Richard Blumenthal says the devices should be shot down if they can't be identified. And we've learned that House Speaker Mike Johnson did get a federal briefing on the sightings, as have Senate staffers in a few select offices. But other than that, there's been very little transparency. So what's going on? Is this some contagious mass hysteria? Or are people really seeing something that our government cannot identify? Our own Rich McHugh went out drone hunting in New Jersey. He did not come back empty-handed. Rich, tell us what you saw.
Hi, Elizabeth. Well, I got to be honest here. You know, when this story first came out a few weeks ago, as a resident of New Jersey, as a journalist, I didn't pay it much credence. I thought it would turn out to be a bunch of pranksters and this would all be over by now. The experience I had last night, however, changed the way I feel about this story completely. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 lights, 6 lights.
I didn't believe what I was seeing. But what was I seeing? We're here in central Jersey. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen about 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder right there. One after another, these drones appeared in the night sky. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful, white blinking lights.
That is not a plane.
Definitely not an airplane, but what was it? Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones.
Why do you think that is?
We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
And this is a sworn officer?
A sworn officer, yes. We contacted state police, we contacted the FBI, we contacted the Coast Guard, at which point the Coast Guard went out with their boat and they reported seeing 13 following their boat. And then the Coast Guard also advised that they went over them about 300 feet and had a wingspan of about 8 feet.
I see one right here.
Did I see the same thing that officer saw? I'm still not sure. What I can show you is this video. What I can tell you is I've never seen anything like it before. Wow. In more than a month since these reports started, the federal government doesn't know what they are either.
What's your message to the White House?
My message is come to the Jersey Shore. I know it's wintertime, but come see what we see, and then, maybe have a better appreciation for why our residents are concerned.
You know, the Ocean County Sheriff, that drone unit, they have an industrial grade drone. They put it up. They were tracking one of these drones, Elizabeth, and they said this thing easily evaded them, disappeared out of thin air. So, you know, to me, it's, if this is not our military, then it's even more scary, and we need the answers, frankly.
All right, Rich
We begin in the Middle East, where the Yemen-based Houthis launched a hypersonic ballistic missile at Israel, sparking a major escalation in the region. The missile was launched from an undisclosed location near Yemen's capital and traveled nearly 1,500 miles before it was intercepted over Tel Aviv. However, according to the Iran-backed Houthis, the missile, which has been codenamed Palestine II, hit the intended target in Tel Aviv.
The missile force carried out a military operation targeting a military target of the Israeli enemy in the occupied area of Jaffa using a hypersonic ballistic missile, type Palestine II. The operation successfully achieved its objectives by grace of Allah. Houthi armed forces continue to carry out military operations and strike all targets belonging to the Israeli enemy in the occupied territories. And these operations will not stop until the aggression against Gaza is halted and the blockade lifted.
Now, this is the first time the Houthis launched a missile at Israel, and the United States and Israel worked together to track the trajectory of the missile right from the moment it was launched from Yemen. The weapon is estimated to have reached nearly Mach 16, which is 16 times the speed of sound before it maneuvered at high speeds towards Tel Aviv. However, a quick and coordinated response by the U.S. and Israel helped in intercepting the ballistic missile before it caused any serious damage.
Just so you know, so I can share with you exactly, precisely what happens. The air raid siren went off. We have 1.5 minutes to get to shelter. Myself and my colleagues did just that. And that means not just me here working in Israel, but every single person living in this area. So that's millions of people, children, mums, dads, old people having to run to shelter because of this Yemeni missile. Yemenis and the Houthis in particular should understand very, very well, as the Houthis understand, and as Hezbollah understand very well, as Hamas understand very well, that Israel's patience is not inexhaustible.
Now, following the Houthi ballistic missile launch, the United States activated its forces in the region. Aircraft and warships of the United States Central Command launched coordinated attacks against the Houthis in Yemen. The U.S. Air Force carried out multiple precision strikes against key command and control facilities that were being operated by the Iran-backed proxies. Now, unlike Hezbollah and Hamas, the Houthis have in fact not stopped attacking Israel and have carried out multiple drone strikes on Tel Aviv in recent days. The Yemeni group also targeted at least 2 U.S. Navy warships in the Red Sea just last week. Iran has already lost a key ally in Syria and is now turning up the heat against Israel by emboldening the Houthis to launch ballistic missiles. However, it remains to be seen whether these attacks are pushing millions of Yemeni people towards war, as Israel and Washington threaten to completely destroy the military capabilities of the Houthis.
The former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad appears to be speaking out for the first time since rebels took control of the government. In a statement purportedly from Assad, he claims he never planned to leave Syria but was evacuated by the Russian military after one of Russia's bases in Syria came under attack. Meanwhile, as the new Syrian Authority establishes itself, U.S.-backed forces in the region are concerned about ISIS potentially regrouping. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams reports.
We have spent the last several days here in eastern Syria with American-backed forces that control around a quarter of the country. In the city of Raqqa, that's the former ISIS capital, the headquarters of the so-called Islamic State, we saw those American-backed forces patrolling city streets where they've brought stability and security. But the American-backed forces are worried that the collapse of the Syrian regime in Damascus and a power vacuum that may develop in its aftermath could give ISIS an opportunity to try and stage a comeback. There are even concerns that ISIS could try to join up with some of the rebel forces that toppled the regime. We also visited a high-security jail in this region holding thousands of ISIS prisoners. Now, a prison break there in 2022 led to a 10-day battle to regain control, and the jail remains a major target for ISIS operatives that still exist here as sleeper cells and hideouts in the desert. The jail's warden told us that they are not telling the prisoners that the regime in Damascus was toppled because it could, quote, create disobedience. He believes that ISIS is mobilizing. Back to you.
Holly Williams, thank you.
Wassim Nasser has interviewed the HTS rebel leader Ahmed al-Shara in Damascus. We can cross now live to the Syrian capital to speak to our reporter there. Wassim, tell us firstly, how was this interview organised? How did it come about?
Well, actually, it was organized with other foreign journalists. There was conditions. It shouldn't have been filmed, either recorded, but we could tell what he told us, and we could address the questions that we asked him publicly.
And Wassim, one of the questions that you asked him was on the European diplomats or delegations arriving into Syria. What are the rebels expecting from the international community?
Well, exactly. That was the question I asked, and actually they expect from the international community to help them regarding accountability of the Assad regime figures and of Assad himself, and especially getting back all the money that was taken out of the country by the Assad clan. And of course, we talked about the sanctions too. And Julani Ahmed al-Shara said the sanctions should be put out of, should be stopped regarding Syria, because he said we are victims of those sanctions, while the dictator, the oppressor, is out of Syria. So sanctions should be lifted, as he said. And when asked him about him being on a terrorist list, he said that it doesn't matter for him personally. The most important thing is lifting the sanctions from Syria in order to be able to rebuild and to help the country get on the move again.
And Wassim, finally, I believe he also had some comments regarding the Israeli bombings and incursions into Syria.
Well, he said that Israel has no alibi left regarding bombing Syria, because they, or HTS, ousted Shia militias and Hezbollah, so Israel should stop bombing Syria. And he asked also for the help of the international community in this regard. And he said and emphasized also on the fact that he's not looking for a war, neither with Israel or any neighboring country. He said literally, Syrians are very tired. It is time for them to have some peace, and they are not seeking any wars, and he would not permit any war act coming from Syria or either from people on Syrian soil regarding any country in the region, including Israel.
Wassim Nasser there in Damascus. Thanks indeed.
People's Liberation Army's Electronic Warfare Unit has produced a list of targets for a coordinated attack against U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups. This comes at a time when Chinese Navy has been flaunting its power. It has been threatening Taiwan of leaving U.S. and its allies worried. Our next story brings you all the details.
The dragon is roaring on the high seas. Taiwan is feeling the heat. The Chinese ships keep testing Taiwan's defenses, making Taipei and its allies jittery. China's military machine is flexing its technological muscle. The Chinese Navy is casting an ominous shadow over U.S. naval supremacy in the Pacific. As geopolitical tensions simmer, the People's Liberation Army unveils a chilling blueprint that could fundamentally reshape modern naval warfare. The Chinese military electronic warfare capabilities have reached a critical inflection point, transforming from a regional threat to a global strategic game-changer. The PLA has identified and mapped precise vulnerabilities in U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups, presenting a kill list that sends tremors through Pentagon war rooms. At the heart of this unprecedented revelation lies a meticulously researched strategy targeting the U.S. Navy's most sophisticated defense systems. The PLA's Electronic Warfare Unit has not just created a list, it's crafted a technological roadmap designed to neutralize America's maritime dominance. The revelation, published in the government-supervised defense industry conversion in China, outlines a coordinated strategy to disrupt and neutralize the U.S. Navy's key systems in the event of conflict. The primary target, according to Chinese researchers, is the U.S. Navy's Cooperative Engagement Capability System, a critical air defense and early warning network that connects radar and missile systems across a carrier group. Chinese researchers argue that the CEC's reliance on wireless communication links makes it vulnerable to electronic interference. The PLA is also targeting a loophole on phased array radars aboard U.S. Aegis ships. Chinese experts claim these sophisticated radars can be overwhelmed by advanced technologies like drones, creating noise and false targets to disrupt detection. PLA specialists have also identified U.S. military signal transponders as weak points that could be exploited to infiltrate networks. With over 90% of China's civilian technologies convertible to military use, its dominance in electronic device production gives it a strategic edge. This unprecedented kill list shows the urgent need for the US and its allies to bolster their defenses against China's rapidly advancing electronic warfare capabilities. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.